Me Too is a worldwide activity now which has prompted millions of women across the world to come out forward, speak out about narrating personal stories of sexual harassment and assault. Joining us for more on that is Pranadika Devbarban, who is an activist and also a founder of 1 Million Against Abuse. Pranadika, appreciate your speaking with us here on WION. First up, you too. Before I get into the other aspects of the campaign, I want to ask you if you too have been the recipient of sexual harassment and violence.
For quite a number of years now, and which is why I started the campaign. And I've been harassed online, I've been harassed in real life. So yes, I am a survivor. I'm part of the movement, therefore.
Pranadika, this is now a movement which has taken over social media. What I want to ask you is, going through these multiple personal stories of sexual harassment from women across the world, what comes to your mind over what the next step really should be? The question also arises, where do we go from here? Because many have been also talking about how we have known this all along, that women and those around us have been suffering, have been surviving sexual assault and harassment for the longest time. What next?
Well, I think that this movement is very important in terms of bringing forth the elephant in the room, which is, as you mentioned, sexual harassment has been around forever. Not only does it affect women, it affects men, it affects those who identify with the third gender and others. So I think the next step would be to actually start educating people and addressing the mentality that promotes abuse.
And also your reaction to the men who've also come forward, though the number has, of course, proportionately been scanty. What do you have to say to the men who have perhaps not really come out and spoken as much as they should have?
Well, I'd just like to share that a government study in 2007 said that boys were sexually abused more than girls. So I would also like to just share the fact that, I know it is difficult for men to speak about abuse, but I just like to express solidarity with men who have come forward. A lot of my friends are survivors of same-sex abuse. A lot of the men, a lot of friends of mine who are from the trans community. So this is just to let them know that they are not alone.
Pranadika, continue to stay on with me, please. Let's also broaden this up. We do have a report telling us what this campaign, this online movement really is all about. Me Too is no longer just a campaign limited to one country. It's now gone the world over. And it's now flooding Facebook and Twitter with countless personal stories of sexual assault. More in this report. This was the tweet by actress Eliza Milano in the aftermath of the Harvey Weinstein sex abuse scandal that started it all. Hours later, Facebook and Twitter were flooded. Two simple words now narrate countless stories of sexual harassment across the world. Me Too is a movement led by millions of survivors of sexual assault and harassment with one message: to highlight the magnitude of the problem. Amid this worldwide outpouring from women, many men have also stepped in to show solidarity, sharing powerful messages. The scale of the problem stares us in the face. France has taken the lead. A new law will now impose on-the-spot fines for harassment of women on the streets of France. 34-year-old Marlène Schiappa, France's gender equality minister, has set out plans for a new law cracking down on sexual violence and harassment. The proposals include on-the-spot fines for catcalling and lecherous behavior in public. France's First Lady Brigitte Macron too has come forward to speak out in support of women decrying sexual harassment. This after 4 French actresses have revealed their encounters with movie mogul Harvey Weinstein, making the issue of sexual harassment resurface in France. President Emmanuel Macron had earlier said he would be stripping the Hollywood producer of the prestigious Légion d'Honneur award. As Me Too fast becomes who hasn't and we all have, The magnitude of the problem compels a question. What's next? Bureau Report, WION.
Pranadika, also, this is, as the report also outlines, I don't know of a single woman who perhaps has not had an incident of sexual assault, sexual harassment, catcalling, being stalked, and so on and so forth. The list goes on. To your mind, what else does this campaign really have the potential of doing? Because we must also ensure as women that this movement does not lose steam, given the magnitude that it's really talking about.
I think, like as I mentioned earlier, there was a reference to the Harvey Weinstein controversy. I'd like to just bring forth, the Indian context. We have a lot of Indian powerful people. We have people in power who are doing or have done pretty much the same thing. I think we need to start bringing those people out in the forefront. We need to start outing them instead of shielding them. Our culture is constantly shaming women for being victimized. It's constantly, what did she do to get to be assaulted? I think along with addressing the mentality, we need to bring forth the fact that abuse is a crime, sexual harassment is a crime, and whatever laws we have need to be strengthened and actually implemented. And I think the movement Me Too has the power to do that. We have the power to harness the potential of the internet, encourage solidarity, and really just, bring awareness into the forefront, bring action into the forefront, and more than that, just encourage accountability.
Pranadika, also we've had a strong lead that's been taken by France. We have a new law which has been proposed there, one that takes a tough stand when it comes to catcalling as well, or even imposing on-the-spot fines on harassment on the streets. Do you think it's about time that other countries also follow suit?
Well, I absolutely feel that people do, as I mentioned, need to be accountable for their crimes. However, in terms of the Indian culture, in terms of how we define sexual harassment, I think many people don't realize that some actions are actually sexually abusive. I mean, you mentioned catcalling, and France acknowledges catcalling as harassment, whereas we use catcalling in Bollywood music. So the general public that watches that content is going to think that that behavior is not harassment, that is okay. So as I mentioned, then we need to have that awareness first and implementation of laws later.
Yes, so I also then have a follow-up question. In India, we're looking at a rather disappointing situation where catcalling, being stalked, so on and so forth, are not taken as seriously as they should. They do comprise sexual harassment, but the law does not acknowledge that.
Exactly. I mean, I think, like I mentioned, ultimately, I run a campaign in order to raise awareness against abuse, and the constant challenge being faced as an Indian woman and as an activist is the fact that the mentality is forever going to be regressive. And that, for example, unless a person knows what abuse is, what constitutes abuse, how is that person going to then know about the law against abuse? Because we do have anti-rape laws, we do have sexual harassment in the workplace, Vishakha guidelines in place. We have a lot that we can do along our existing legal framework. But without the awareness, nothing's going to happen, unfortunately.
Pranadika, also the kind of reactions that we've got suggesting that it's no longer about Me Too, it's more about who hasn't. The magnitude is now, the message is loud and clear. The magnitude is for everyone to know. It also was an unsaid story, but we are all glad that it has now come out as strongly as it has. But beyond that, do you think that also speaking about who hasn't, and the men talking about, and really turning our attention to the perpetrators now in this case, really needs to be the immediate step in the larger process?
Absolutely. I mean, I had an activist friend recently commenting on Me Too, saying, why isn't the media asking, the men and the rapists why they actually do it? What exactly leads to this need for one person to violate another? And since a majority of harassment survivors are women, although I would say that it's equal women and men also, but one of the things is we need to also address why the perpetrators perpetrate their crimes in the first place. I don't think there's enough research being done on that to understand the mentality of an abuser. that is also something we need to focus on in this country.